Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
I don't want you to write. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crying in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad.
Has the whole world gone crazy? Am I the only one around here who gives a shit about the rules?
You have the luxury of not knowing what I know.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore!"
Hello and welcome to another Thursday Night Live. So, to the people on Rumble, my apologies, the title is wrong. I changed it, but I guess it didn't save. I'm not sure. I went back and tried to change it again, and it won't let me at the moment. So I will have to, during the broadcast, the actual topics are what you saw on the screen for the ticker regarding the universities. And I have some cause updates for you, so some more winning with cause. And then I want to discuss how to play offense and how to play offense against this crumbling world falling to Marxism, what we can do to help make a difference and what the general sense of thought needs to be. But first, the cause updates right after I get into my own shameless plug. So the shirts you see worn on the broadcast are available at thepatriotthinktank.com. There is a link to my Etsy store. There is also a link to sign the petition for Convention Estates. So if you're not sold on it, Thursday Night Lives are a great opportunity for you to bring somebody in who may have questions or who may be naysaying you. You know, maybe you bought in and you're like, yeah, this is the way to go. This is the only solution. And you come across a doo-doo who's like, no, they're going to erase the Bill of Rights or some crazy nonsense like that. Bring them to the broadcast, right? Because you can comment here. I will highlight your comments. We can have that conversation. I see Stacy Boba says someone's having problems hearing. I'm not sure. It looks like the audio is on point on my end. And I was, let me check. Hold on. Now you got me thinking. So appreciate it. Let me see. Nope. Yeah, the audio is working. So I got the stream going. I just went to one of the actual streams. So the audio is working and it seems to be plenty loud. So I'm not sure. Not sure what's going on there, Stacy, but hang in there with me. Try and figure it out. I definitely don't want to lose you. Lady Mern in the house. New Jersey, one of the district captains for Convention Estates over in Jersey. Most causes are up at the monument for the National Day of Prayer. Couldn't go. Well, I'm sorry you couldn't go, but I am glad that you are here with me. So I was just about to cover the topic for the topic of cause updates with respect to Pennsylvania. So recently, we had one of our very few losses in Colorado, although Colorado was not even a state, honestly, that was on my radar. When I heard that they were hearing it, I was like, huh? And it turns out they heard it in what's called a kill committee, in my opinion. Most of the people on the committee didn't speak or ask questions. The few that did were the ones, well, most of them were ones who gave aye votes, but nonetheless, at the end, it was like, no, from people. You couldn't see them, so it was just audio, so it was hard to even know they were there. So it was kind of a shocker at the end because the presentation was phenomenal. Grassroots were on fire, as always. They were there in force, maybe 10, 15 testimonials. And then one of the... one of the doo-doos on the committee actually turned around. It was like that Comey moment where he lists off all the things Hillary has done that are illegal and against the law, and then at the end is like, but I don't recommend we do anything about it. So I was kind of like, All right. Not sure where to. I mean, she was like, "I agree with you on term limits. I agree with you on the process. I agree with you on the government going fiscally out of control. I agree with the overreach, but I just can't seem to figure why I should send this to the House." I was just like, "What?" But anyway, enough about Colorado. It is what it is. Flash. The good news there, though, is that it actually got heard by the committee. So Colorado is one of those states for years have been trying to penetrate and have not been even able to get in front of the committee. So there are some shocker states that we've passed committee in. Massachusetts was definitely one. Although my good buddy Mike Arnold, who is now a regional director for Convention of States over on the East Coast, had had gotten it past committee in Massachusetts once before, but it passed again through committee, which was outstanding. And then yeah, absolutely great news. It got heard, absolutely, and that's for those that don't follow this sort of thing. Like it's a big deal. You know, it's a big deal that it gets heard, right? Because there's a big movement out there, well funded, all right, like Soros kind of funded to shut this down. And they send people out to these legislators well in advance. And let's face it, folks, you know, most of the population knows very little about actual civics, right? I've gone over this in detail with how it was removed from, you know, the classrooms, replaced with social studies, which is some bizarre quagmire of different subjects. It's not civics, okay? And so most of us don't understand it, and that goes for the state legislatures as well, right? These legislators, some of them are learning it. They should get themselves versed on it beforehand. I know grassroots are reaching out to them, trying to get them versed on it beforehand. But a lot of times when you watch these things, these committees, even on the full floors, they just don't. The questions they ask are like, you know, you should have known that, right? That's my opinion. But I understand. I understand that these are not career politicians. These are, you know, we look at politicians as if the federal government is the standard, right? Is the standard for all politicians. And there are some corrupt coconuts in state legislatures and local governments as well, but not nearly on the level. As long as there are humans, there are going to be some corrupt coconuts. But in the end, not nearly as many. I mean, most of these people that serve in these state legislators are good, God-fearing people who, you know, and whether or not even they're a person of faith, they're there for service. They're there. They're not making a ton of money. A lot of these legislators don't, you know, a lot of these legislatures do not meet all the time. They're not constantly, you know, it's not like an all year round type deal. Some of them don't even meet every year. So, you know, when you're able to get their attention and when you're able to get in front of them, you know, you got to do your best to try and educate them. And I can tell you, grassroots have been doing a great job of that overall. And so the good news that we have to report for cause is another win. So it passed the Senate committee in Pennsylvania. So that is outstanding. So now Pennsylvania is a state that I've been waiting to get moving for a long time. And they were at one point in a place where, you know, I had heard Mark Meckler, this was maybe last year or the year before, where I heard Mark Meckler say, you know, he got like there were people from the Senate and House that reached out to him, like high level people who were like, I think we're looking really good on this. And then, you know, and then it got stalled. So it's good that it's not being stalled. It's good that it passed committee. It looked like, you know, most of the grassroots dirty work, as you would call it, right? It's very clean work, but the grunt work, right? The getting out there, you know, talking to people, you know, talking to legislators, writing, etc. All of that work behind the scenes made for an incredibly swift passing in the Senate, where they didn't really even debate. He just knew he had the votes going in and went in and took the vote, got it, wrapped it up, done. So that it'll go to the full Senate floor now, and I'm optimistic on the Senate floor. It's the House in Pennsylvania where there might be a question mark or two. I believe it's a Democrat House, I think, by one person. It shouldn't matter though, because the Democrats there are sane, and Democrat voters want this. So this is not, you know, these are not the Marxist type the AOCs and all that. There may be a handful thrown in there, but that's not what makes up their legislature. So these are rational people, and hopefully hopefully they're educated on the topic in the House, and we can get things moving there as well. New Hampshire, in the comments of the cause video, I don't have it in front of me, but one of the cause supporters, I don't know if it was a district captain or something along those lines, but someone had commented that the bill in North Carolina is getting ready to push forward, I believe, in the House, and has already passed the other chamber, the Senate. So looking, New Hampshire's another one. North Carolina is another one. If I said New Hampshire before, I'm sorry. It's North Carolina. And that's another one that's been on my radar, that I've been waiting to see what's going to happen, how it's going to go down. And so far, so good in North Carolina. Who's going to be state number 20? That's what we're looking for, right? Who's going to be state on this March to 34? Who's going to be state number 20? Right. And so those are the updates right now. If you didn't catch the updates a couple of weeks ago, Hawaii also passed committee. Another one that kind of came out of the blue and shocked me. Did not expect Hawaii to pass committee. Watch that whole thing. Great job to the grassroots in Hawaii as well. And folks, if you want to, I'm going to get into it a little more later as to how these folks are getting these things done. But if you have questions, if you have anything regarding if you got anything regarding Convention of States that you or a partner or a friend is questioning, by all means, bring that to my attention, because and bring it during the live, right? Bring your friends during the live, the naysayers, bring them here. I will absolutely help them get on the right path and catch up with the purpose and the fact that this is the only solution. And I mean that. It is the only solution. There are other things we can do, like, all right, yeah, you want to get Trump elected? I get it, right? Get the border secure, right? Start maybe slow down, right? Slow down the globalist machine that's been moving a little bit, and give us some time to get the process done. But in the end, it's going to be us getting this process done. It is the only solution. It's the only way that anyone is going to be able to get our fiscal situation under control. All right, it needs to be directly written into the Constitution. The courts have splattered the Constitution with bizarre and incredibly broad and generous interpretations, empowering the federal government to do all kinds of things it was never intended to do. And there's only one method to reel that back. There's only one method to make that go away or reverse that. And that method is constitutional amendment. That's the only override for a Supreme Court. There is no other path. No, you can't legislate around it. There's no other path. And frankly speaking, I like this path because the federal government has no say. And all three topics are restrictive, so there's not going to be term limits. We all want, and they're all universal. Term limits, fiscal restraints, and government overreach, right? Right? Say it with me, right? Term limits, fiscal restraints, and government overreach. That's what we're looking for. That's the goal. To start, right? To start. And that's going to kind of lead me, well, I'm going to let me get into the universities first. But I will get into more about how we go about that process. So the universities, if you're not aware, if you're living under a rock somewhere, or you just haven't been paying attention, universities have all been hijacked. All the elite ones, anyway, have all been hijacked by their own Frankensteins. So, and I mean, if you've seen it, right, you've seen the different nonsense going on, and they're smashing windows, doing the usual Marxist stuff, right? Antifa stuff, like smashing windows, breaking things, right? Setting up camp, taking over the university buildings and whatnot, and watching the university heads try and figure out what to do. Honestly, I've just got my popcorn watching it. I don't want anyone to help these universities. I want them to have absolutely no help. I want to watch them stay under siege. I want to watch these I want to watch these kids start, crapping in the hallways the way they do all over the city streets. I want to see all that stuff going down because this is the university's product. This is what they've created. This is their own Frankenstein. And now Frankenstein has turned on them and turned on them because they're not supporting terrorism. Like it's inexplicable. But why do they not know? Right? Why do they not know that they're supporting terrorism? Because that's what the universities taught them. Right? Why do they not understand anything about why do you hear these bizarre historical interpretations coming out of these kids? Why do you hear that? Where are they hearing that? Where are they getting that information? Where on earth would they? I mean, if you've ever tried to converse with one of these people, they talk to you as if explaining the situation after World War II and the creation of the state of Israel, as if you don't understand, as if you've never heard it before, as if it's like they tell you, no, you don't understand. This goes all the way back. I'm like, no, I do understand. I knew this for decades. This is not new information. And where you're going with that is new information, but even that is not information. It's their opinion after that, and their complete lack of understanding of any history of Israel and anything along those lines is evident. And who creates that monster? The universities create that monster. That's who created it. So let them reap what they sow. Let them reap what they sow. That's my only point. Like watching these, listen to this one, right? Just these kids, they don't even know why they're there. I have a clip that I want to play. You might have seen it. It's been around for about a day or two, but it's gone pretty viral. And just to give you an idea of the caliber of person that we're dealing with, right? The thought process. This is what the universities create. But they lodge themselves and set up their tent cities and set them and are holding down the buildings in Colombia, and all of a sudden they realize, well, wait a minute, we don't have any food. So here's and listen to the journalist. You're gonna have to turn your volume up a little bit, Stacy. If you're still with us and you're still having audio issues, you're really gonna have to put your ear to the phone to hear the journalist. But if you're hearing normal volume, you should hear the journalist okay. But I want to play this because I just felt that it was. I laughed so hard when I heard it. Listen to what the journalist says.
Why should the university be obligated to provide food to people who've taken over a building?
Well, first of all, we're saying that they're obligated to provide food to students who pay for a meal plan here.
But you mentioned that there was a request that food and water be brought in, unless I misunderstood.
To allow it to be brought in. I mean, well, I guess it's ultimately a question of what kind of community and obligation Columbia feels it has to its students. Do you want students to die of dehydration and starvation or get severely ill, even if they disagree with you? If the answer is no, then you should allow basic, I mean, it's crazy to say because we're on an Ivy League campus, but this is like basic humanitarian aid we're asking for. Like, could people please have a glass of water?
But they did put themselves in that very deliberately, in that situation and in that position. So it seems like you're sort of saying, we want to be revolutionaries, we want to take over this building, now would you please bring us food and water?
Nobody's asking them to bring anything. We're asking them to not violently stop us from bringing in basic humanitarian aid.
They're stopping the delivery of food?
We are looking for a commitment from them that they will not stop it
but
violently.
They haven't stopped it yet.
I don't know to what extent it has been attempted, but we're looking for a commitment.
And the grub.
So if you didn't hear what the one journalist was saying, is they were trying to understand what the F this lady is talking about and what exactly it is that these people want. And so they're asking her, like, okay, so you want food brought to you? Like, it's like, no, we don't want food. We're not asking for them to bring food in. We're asking for students that pay for meal plans to be able to get food. And it's like, well, they could get food if you weren't holding the building hostage. Like the level of like the poor level of planning and thought process that went into this was just hilarious. And then she's like, well, what we're basically asking for is humanitarian aid in Manhattan. It's like if you want to eat, well, there's pizzerias all over the place. As a matter of fact, you can get in Manhattan just about any type of ethnic food from anywhere in the world, authentically cooked and prepared by someone from that country. Like, absolutely, there is nowhere on earth where the diversity of food is as prominent as it is in the city of Manhattan, and at least certainly nowhere with more variety. Maybe a few places with similar, but I mean, and the idea, well, go out and get food then. Well, we can't go out. We're revolutionaries. We're taking over this building. Well, then take over the building. But we got to eat. Well, then go get something to eat. It's like the idea that this is an emergency is just, I mean, it is to them. It's not to anyone else. Everyone else is straight laughing at this. The journalist said, if you missed it, he said, so it's almost like you're saying you want to be revolutionaries, and we want to take over this building, and we're willfully, engaging in this activity, but we're going to need some food. So we need you, the people we are holding this building hostage from, to bring us DoorDash. Like, just saying it out loud is just, and you know what? Whatever. Let the university, let them burn the whole place down. All right. And I say that tongue in cheek. I'm not really encouraging anyone to burn anything. But at the same time, let them keep it hostage. Like, figure it out, Columbia. Figure it out, because you created these people. You created them, and you created the scenario and the culture. All of this youth that come out with defund the police, and this is all created in the elite universities. All of it. So the idea that now someone's supposed to sympathize with them. No. Now we just sit back, eat our popcorn, and watch them eat their own, because that's what's happening right now. That's what you're seeing. Okay, that's what you're seeing. You're seeing them all just eat their own, which is inevitably this. If you look at how the ideological subversion, what it's designed, I talk a lot about how it happened and how long they've been at this and all that. But what is the end goal of it? What is the end goal of, making such an effort that for 60, 70 years, you're specifically hiring people who have bought into this subversion, right? They created their first generation with the hippies, and then it's like, okay, now that we've got, a youth generation who buys into this garbage, let's go ahead and handpick the ones. Like, we're not going to pick the best professor. We're going to pick the best professor that buys into the ideology, right? We're not going to pick the best actor. We're going to pick the best actor that buys into the ideology. We're not going to pick the best rock band. We're going to pick the best rock band who's doing what we need them to do. Like this is where, and every single, we're not going to pick the best anchor for media. We're going to pick the anchors and the staff who buy into the ideology. We're not going to, we're going to do whatever we can to get people of this ideology. We're going to fund them into politics. We're going to, all of these pieces, right? What's the end game? Well, now you've got them all, right? We're at an incredibly advanced stage now. The universities are total garbage right now. Total garbage. So we're at this advanced stage where, there might be 2 or 3, like, actually freedom-minded universities that exist in the country anymore. They've subverted every single other one. So we got to this point. What was the end game? Was it just to make them think, men can have babies, and that, and that Palestinians and Hamas are good, innocent organizations and groups that, like Hamas is just, they're just misunderstood. Is that what the point was? No, the point was to shake the ants in the jar, right? At will, to control the thought process of society and make sure that society stays separated. And when I say separated, I mean hatred, anger, hostility with black and white, Hispanic, unit gender, right? So they made up they made up an infinite amount of genders that you could get pissed off about, right? An infinite amount. But the point of the matter is, they have all these things to keep not only people separated from each other, but to keep religion out of the public square, right? They've successfully removed religion. You could get on your knees and pray to Allah, but you cannot, God forbid, you start doing, Christian prayer in class, right? And the irony of it all was there's a ton of videos out there of these protesters who are all anti-religious, and for the young ones, look, part of me sympathizes with them from the standpoint of they weren't born this dumb. Okay, they weren't born this dumb. We allowed them, like, we have to own this too. Like, we allowed them, these schools successfully from a young age, right? Just made Marxism and things of that nature, concepts, the ideology, the ideas, just made it normal, made it like that was the norm. Like this is how everyone operates. So, and we were not necessarily raised like that, even though the subversion was still in play. It was mostly in universities, and I'm a Gen Xer. It was mostly in universities before. Now, I did go to Catholic school for 12 years, so that, plug there. But I wasn't getting all this stuff before college. When I went to college, then it became pretty evident, what they were trying to accomplish, and that actually turned me into a conservative. Right. Up until then, I wasn't as politically active, but I mean, my first vote was for Ross Perot. Just to put it in perspective, I never quite went to the Clinton camp, or any of that, but Ross Perot. I didn't really like George Bush either, Senior, and so I went to Perot. But the end goal of this, all right, is to shake the ant jar. And when I say shake the ant jar, I mean, you may have heard, I don't know if this was actually true or not, but they gave the analogy where if you put red ants and black ants in a jar, they generally will just move around and kind of do their thing, and there's no real hostility. But then when you shake the jar, everyone thinks the other side shook it and they start going to war and killing each other. And the question is, who's shaking the jar, right? That's what it comes down to. Who's shaking the jar? Because it ain't the ants. It's who's shaking the jar. And so, in the end, that's where we should be looking. Because if you're still in that camp of Republicans and Democrats, and we need to vote for Republicans, and that's going to save the day, and as long as they're not these Democrats, then that's going to save the day. Like, the days of walking up and just blindly clicking R's down the line, like, we're not in those days right now. You just saw what over 100 Republicans just authorized in the House. We thought we won the House and that was somehow going to get spending under control. No, it won't. Right? Not when that many Republicans are signing on, when they're all behind funding proxy wars and like, this is not, like, maybe that's where the Republican Party is gone, but that's not where the Republican voter has gone. And this has been going on longer than Trump. Like, the movement, the movement to get away. Trump benefited from the movement already existing. He didn't make the movement. Now, for some people who never engaged in politics before, and just went through life oblivious, and finally Trump comes, and maybe he made it for them, but they are not the majority. There's not 75 million of those people. There are 75 million people who want full adherence to the Constitution. There are 75 million people who cringe when Trump talks about the vaccine. There are 70. He'll get their votes because it's no longer like he's now a symbol more than anything else. I mean, the primary ended the day that they started attacking him. DeSantis knew it. He walked away like he should. All right. But the fact is, the blatant attacking, right? I mean, we're getting so close to pure Marxism right now that you can smell it. But we're not there. We're not there, and no matter how much they try to blatantly violate the Constitution, it always comes back to smack them. And it's literally the fact that we are a constitutional republic and not a democracy is the only thing that has saved that difference. That's why I get so angry about it. That difference is enormous. That difference, the idea that, you know, in like Europe, those are all democracies, right? Europe are all democracies, some version of, right? They've got their own names for them. But none of them are the shining city on a hill that we are, because their rights are all given to them by their governments. And when they elect people into office, those people can then completely screw them. And there's no legal mechanism to stop it, except waiting for the next election and then re-electing more people. We see how that's working. Right now, you can get arrested for speaking if they don't like what you say. And the determiner of what you say being hate speech or good speech, it's not you. Right? So, in the end, the constitutional republic is the only thing that has kept us afloat. But you know what? Whatever. I mean, the fact of the matter is, let these universities, let them reap what they sow. I'm enjoying this. You know, I want it to continue for a little longer. Here, let them be heard. Let these Palestinian protesters be heard, even though the majority of the people there just wanted to get out of class. You see them talking to them. They have no idea why they're there. And you know, it is what it is. But it brings me to my other point, which I want to spend the rest of the broadcast on. And that is, how do you play offense against Marxists, against the globalist movement, against this threat of tyranny? How do you play offense? And clearly, I'm going to tell you, since I do wholeheartedly believe I will debate anybody necessary or anyone who wants to, either on I'll have you on or whatever, just for the sake of saying Article 5 is the only way. It's the only solution. Now, that's not where I'm going with this conversation. I'm going deeper. All right. I'm going to what makes Article 5 the solution. All right. And it's not just term limits, fiscal restraints, and government overreach. Those are big. Those are epic issues to tackle. But that's not why it's important. What's important when we want to start playing offense is, I don't want to say disregard, but take the focus off of the federal government. From the standpoint of using the federal government, or thinking you can elect people into the federal government, or maybe you want to run yourself and get into the federal government to try and clean things up from within. Because that will not work. You know this because we've done this multiple times, dozens and dozens and dozens of times. And the end result is always the same. Think of every single time, right? You had Gingrich's contract with America. How many times have we won the House since then? How many times have we had the Senate since then? How many times Trump had the Senate, House, and presidency, and still none of these issues got addressed? And I'm not. It's not a dig on Trump. My point is about the system. No president's going to be able to walk in and fix these things. No legislature is going to be able to get together and fix these things. These things are systematically broken issues, structural damage in the federal government, because the culture there is so toxic and so corrupt. You know, I went over with you how these people get rich, right? With their inside trading and whatnot. Nobody punished. No one ever gets punished. Do we not all see that? No one ever gets punished. There's only, and when you look, I should say, when you look at the actual Constitution, not the 3,000-page behemoth that I always show up, right? Not this big joint right here, but the small one that fits in your pocket, the actual Constitution, the one that like Gorsuch follows. When you look at the Constitution, you look at, just to fast forward, it lays out all the powers of the federal government, and then it gives you the 10th, number 10 on the amendments, which clearly states anything, not any power, not exclusively given to the federal government in that document. All of those powers not listed belong to the states and to the people. Yet, our courts have found their way through horrific interpretation, sometimes slowly, sometimes in big chunks, have given smaller and smaller amounts of authority to more and more extension, more and more reach, right? When I say some in big chunks, I mean the Commerce Clause, right? Pretty much anything, everything crosses state lines. So the idea that the federal government was supposed to manage everything with respect to the economy is fundamentally ridiculous. But yet here we are. And every time they've been challenged, the courts have given them more leeway. As a matter of fact, it's almost a joke from a tax perspective when it makes it to the court. And what kills me, I mean, they pretty much say, hey, you know what? It's taxes. There's a lot of leeway. The courts have historically given a ton of leeway to the government to tax. Taxing income is not even something that was written directly into the Constitution until 1913. Like the idea, and even then, it was passed on the promise it would only be to the 0.3% richest people, as always, right? And then, of course, here we are today, where everyone's getting beaten over the face with taxes. You get your money, your dollar gets taxed like 20 times before you spend it, and taxed again when you do. Right? But how did that get there? How did progressives get that win? Constitutional amendment. How did the federal government get all of its powers? Supreme Court. How do you override the Supreme Court? We're back to constitutional amendment. This is it, folks. It's the last stand. Now, how do you get a constitutional amendment, even through convention of states? And this is going to bring me to my main point. My main point of how to go about playing offense, and that's to focus locally. Focus on your district legislators. This is how convention of states will get passed. This is how you flex your muscle. People don't understand that. They think, well, this guy's just, he's just from my district. No. He's accessible. In most cases, those people are completely accessible. And not only are they accessible, but they're far easier to hold to account than anyone in the federal government. And that is the biggest piece. The idea was that you're going to be governed not by a president, but by your local legislator. The fact that senators were written in to be appointed and not elected directly had purpose. There was a reason for that. Because if you were a Mitt Romney, right, and this was the 17th Amendment, another blasphemous constitutional amendment, both right there with the income tax, both passed in 1913. Talk about a toxic environment politically. But when you look at it, right, and you look at all of these things combined, and you look at the 17th Amendment, and you look at why they took that power away, or why was it important to progressives to take that power away? Because when you get a Mitt Romney or you get a Liz Cheney, the people are now powerless for 6 years. 6 years. So yes, they eventually voted Liz Cheney out, but they had no recourse. The founders did not set that up that way. Senators are given 6 years largely because they can be removed. When you take that away, someone goes rogue and starts doing the wrong thing 2 years into their term. You've got 4 years of being completely misrepresented by the person you elected and no recourse. That is not the way it's supposed to go down. The way it's supposed to go down is you elect your state legislator and you elect somebody who shares your values You elect somebody who thinks along the lines that you do. And you get that person into office, and every district gets their person into office. And those people who are directly elected by locals, right, are the ones who determine who's going to represent the state in the Senate. And then if there's a problem with that person, let's use Liz Cheney again as the example, you can then come in, petition your your district legislature and be like, look, we're going to remove you if you don't do something about this doo-doo that you put into the Senate. And removing that person is not that difficult. A neighborhood could come together and remove a district captain. I'm sorry, grassroots. Sorry, it can remove a district representative from either House or Senate in that given state. So, a neighborhood, right? Not the whole country, not millions and millions of people. A neighborhood, a well-focused neighborhood can get together and remove some, and they know it. They know it. State legislators, they know if there's 100 people, even if there are 20 people who take time off of work and show up at the state legislature to make their points, to make their voices heard, they know. It's just like in the restaurant business. One person doesn't like their food, or one person didn't get good service. There's probably 10 others who didn't say anything about it. Like they were pissed, but they just didn't bother to tell the manager. That's the way you used to think. It's the same thing, the same way the legislators think. If there are 50 or 100 people here that are this mad, and this, because 50 or 100 people, they don't just organize 50 or 100 people. They know that there's probably 1,000 like-minded people, maybe more. And 1,000 is more than enough to seriously impact an election on a local level. That's where the power is. Talk with the chief of staff. They'll get you an appointment. Here you go. Here's some tips, right? So talk with the chief of staff. They'll get you an appointment with your state reps. They're open to listening. And I can tell you, of all of the hours of state legislature footage that I have watched when following these cause debates and the Convention of States presentations on Senate and House floors across the country, I can tell you the conversations, when you listen to these people interact, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. Everybody's respectful, and everybody takes everybody seriously. Like once in a blue, you get a doo-doo. But the overwhelming majority of the people involved here want to hear from their constituents. They say it all the time. I got this letter from my constituents. Sometimes they're holding it in their hand. I had coffee with this constituent. I think it was South Carolina. I think where he was saying one of the sponsors of the bill, I think it was saying he was against Convention of States as well. But it was a constituent who he went and had coffee with, or tea, I think he said. I remember joking that it was tea. And over that cup of tea, the constituent asked him, and he said this. He asked me, how do you feel about Convention of States? He said, honestly, I don't know that much about it, but I've generally been against it because, and he went on to say all the scary stuff that he's heard. And so the constituent said, okay, let me ask, can you promise me one thing? And he said, yes. He said, if I give you material to read for the other side of the argument, like factual material, historical documents, historians, Federalist Papers and whatnot, if I give you that information, would you promise me that you would read it? And he agreed. And he read it. And I don't know exactly what stuff he gave him, right? I would guess Nadelson's book, right? I think it's the Law of Article 5, and probably some Federalist Papers and things like that to refute some arguments with actual founder testimony. And he says, when I read that, he's like, it opened my eyes, and it suddenly became clear to me that we need to do this. And he then sponsored the bill, and then afterwards it passed in South Carolina after like 8 years of trying. And all it took was one constituent who met with him, who was articulate enough and understood Article 5 well enough to have that conversation and came prepared with materials to give him so that he could help educate him, right? And if you look at it, right, and I don't even know who that grassroots constituent was, but when you hear that story come from the legislator, you got to think like that one individual, right? Despite all the efforts of everybody trying to educate these guys for 9 years, this guy got an in, sat down and said it the right way, and turned a doubter into a supporter who then sponsored the bill, and eventually it got passed. That is, when we say power to the people, that's what that is. That is how the people exercise their power in a constitutional republic. We do it locally. If everybody, right, if everybody goes ahead and handles their district, right? And I remember, I had mentioned this on a podcast. I actually did a video about that experience, and the person was tearing it down, saying, the organization is broken down into districts, and and it's so minute, and it was like no idea how it was supposed to run, right? That it had to be broken down in districts, etc. But I can tell you the movement as a whole needs you. That I can tell you. The movement as a whole needs you. Because without you, just like anything else that we do, without you, nothing happens. Nothing will happen. So that's the main thrust of what I'm trying to get here is that. And here's the thing, right? Forget the topics for a moment. They're important, but forget them. What's most important about passing this? What's most important about getting, if your state is not one of the 19, and even if it is, you should be out educating people on this topic, looking for material, educate yourself on this topic. And when you sign the petition, there is what's called Cause University. They have a ton of literature that you could dig into, and a ton of references and videos and things like that will just get you the historical context. And what happens when you do that is you get a historical context for how the nation is supposed to be run. Because once we call this, it doesn't just give us a shot at getting amendments for term limits and government overreach and fiscal restraints. It fundamentally changes the way the entire relationship between the federal government and the people. Because it's never been used before, and there are forces that be that are dying to stop any effort to educate people onto this fact. Like the same way the Constitution has prevented Marxism from fully grabbing hold in the United States and has truly protected dissenters from it. Even though, like everyone now is a right-wing, radical. They can say that all they want, but in the end, that's simply not true. Right? And we all know that, and we can say that because we're free to say that because we have the Constitution. This is where I'm going with it, right? So that relationship now, just imagine a world where instead of getting ready to prepare a speech to go in front of the American people, right, and get in front of all these cameras and say, you know what? This health care bill is passed because this is what the American people want, even when polls are showing an overwhelming majority not wanting something. But they say it anyway because it doesn't matter to them, because there's no recourse. Just imagine that scenario changing to, before the speech, someone approaching saying 4 states have already passed resolutions calling for convention to ban healthcare from government operate, like the government cannot deal with healthcare. There's a completely different relationship now. Like the power that comes with being able to move forward on the issues that we can all agree on, and there needs to be massive consensus. Right? This is not the kind of thing where you can just pass something willy-nilly. There has to be consensus. Because if there's not consensus, you're never getting 3/4 of the states to ratify anything. Congress has written all kinds of proposed amendments. I mean, there are hundreds of them. You don't know about them because they had no shot. Only what 17 times really. I mean, the Bill of Rights was kind of a separate deal, but another 17 times after there was pretty wide agreement, right? Pretty wide agreement. And that's necessary, and that's how it should be. But these are topics, right? Like if we wanted to call a convention for the border, right? If we wanted to call a convention giving states, absolute sovereignty over their borders should the federal government fail, we could clarify that issue for Texas and take the case away from Biden and the DOJ, Mayorkas, if they even try to interfere. That can actually be done in this convention. That would fit under the government overreach. I mean, there are things we can do. I mean, really, the sky is the limit when it comes to something that has that type of consensus. Everybody wants term limits. I don't know anyone that doesn't want term limits in Congress. I know there are a few people, actually that's not true. I know there are a few people who still cling to the idea that elections are term limits. They say that while Mitch McConnell stares into the right? While they're wheeling frickin' Dianne Feinstein into a room after she clearly had a stroke. I mean, the Babylon Bee had a... they kill me. They put out an article not long after she passed and said Democrats think Dianne Feinstein's death should not be an obstacle in getting reelected for the... And it's true. If her name was on the docket, they'd vote for her. Because that's how disengaged people are. But the point of the matter is, the power does not rest with the federal government. It rests with the states, right? Marijuana, perfect example. Still illegal federally. The feds could show up at any one of these pot shops and weed stores all over the country in the states that have passed it and start locking people up. They can start locking people up if they want. They don't. Perfect example of the states going, you know what? We don't like that law. And saying, we're going to pass one that is not in violation of the Constitution, but it does kind of throw your law out the window. Right? They still have to keep it, within the Constitution, but that's all they're beholden to. They're not beholden to the federal government. There's no penalty for a state ignoring a federal law, unless ignoring that law is in violation of the Constitution. But they're not. And frankly, the world we'd be living in, right? If people would just, nobody wants the worst, right? So would our education system be the hot mess that it is right now? Would it be if parents were really calling the shots? I don't know if you ever saw the documentary Waiting for Superman. If you didn't, it's a great watch. It breaks down. I don't know if it was just the New York City school system, but there was a charter school in New York City that was so in demand. Now they were doing things completely different than the public schools, than the general public school system. It was still a public school, but it was not unionized, and it was completely different. Their methods of teaching, everything was completely different. And they had to hold a lottery for children to get them into that school. And you were watching parents whose kids did not get selected break down in tears. They were literally breaking down in tears because their children had to go to a government school, to a standard government school. If that's like the country that the founders saw, that's what made the decision. Like that would have been what made the decision. That is not what makes the decision. It wouldn't have been some school board or some union representative. It would have been those parents crying that their children have to go to a regular government school. That's enough to tell you the rest of them need to do what this school is doing. But because it was anti-union, that could not happen. That's what I'm saying when I say govern locally. Worry about your neighborhood. Worry about, like, if you're in Chicago and you've been voting for Democrats all your life, I don't care what color you are. If you're living in Chicago and you've been voting for Democrats all your life, because Chicago's been run by Democrats for most of my lifetime anyway. I don't know that there was ever a conservative majority there. But if you're in that scenario and you're still looking to vote for another so-called Democrat, what does it take to make you figure it out? What could get worse if you voted in a libertarian or a Republican or just somebody who was on your side, which clearly is not, at least in that city, a Democrat? Like, at what point? And you could do it the other way around. I'm not trying to position this as, my view on this to those that follow is that there are no Republicans and Democrats. They're two wings of one bird. It's all a poop show, all of it, with a handful of legitimate people sprinkled in, right? And then you got your YouTube people, right? The Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world. Yeah, Marjorie Taylor is another one with the inside trading. She's making a mint while she passes this friggin' useless impeachment effort for Biden. Like, where's that going? What's the end game, right? What's the end game? The end game is to get you to think she's a fighter, she's this, she's that, when she's engaging in meaningless activities that aren't going to change anything. But all the while, it keeps her in Congress, and keeping her in Congress keeps that insider trading going, keeps those investments coming. I believe with her, she made massive investments or large investments into Lockheed Martin, maybe Boeing, all the weapons companies right before Ukraine kicks off. But she's a Republican. She can't be bad. I saw her videos. She loves this country. Maybe she does, but she loves money a little more, apparently. They called her out in that documentary that I was telling you about from that Blaze TV came out with. I believe it was called, I don't remember the name of it. But anyway, you have to be subscribed to Blaze TV for it. If you are, you'll find it easily. If you're not, and again, I would encourage everyone. Epic Times just came out with another documentary. This one on January 6th, the second one on January 6th. These documentaries that these organizations are coming out with, Epic Times in particular, are absolutely golden. And everyone should be focused on them. Everyone should be if you're not watching Epic TV right now, if you're not in that club, I'm not sponsored. They don't sponsor me or whatever, but I'm just saying it because it's legit. If you're not subscribed to Epic TV, and that comes with the Epic Times subscription, and you could try it. It's like, I forget what their promo is. It's like $1. It's like $1 a month for like 6 months. Trust me when I tell you, when you explore Epic TV and you start looking at their documentaries, The Final War breaks down every completely phenomenally sourced history of the CCP from 1949 to now. And I know a lot of this stuff already, and there was still things in there that I was like, oh, really? And you're talking about sources like Mao Zedong's first officer's daughter. Like these are people who know. But you know what? Look, we've been subverted, right? Let's wrap it up. We've been subverted. If you're still in denial about that, if you still think that like it's just this generation, it never happened, I never saw it. If you think that, then you've got more steps to take. Let me look at these comments. Get rid of the furries out of our schools. Yeah, furries. Furries. You got the furries, and you got the friggin' men can have babies, and unlimited amount of genders. Like, you can't make this stuff up. If you'd have told somebody this garbage in the 90s, they would be laughing their ass off. Wasting time when stuff could be getting done. Yeah. Look, my point to this whole thing is that we've been subverted. There's no denying that. It is so phenomenally well documented. Like, the entire process. The fact that, Comrade Andropov and the rest of them, were celebrating the hippie generation, right? Yuri Bezmenov talks about that. They looked at the hippies as the first win. Now they could start picking their people for big positions. And they did. They put them, and here we are. Here we are. It's advanced to such a stage now, right? And little by little, right? So what was the impact of doing it to our generation? What were we saying when that next level of nudity hits regular national television? What were we saying? Some people used to think Elvis wiggling his hips was offensive. Which, by the way, is kind of where it started. And again, it's not that Elvis is in on this. It's just these are the types of entertainers that they want to promote. Elvis was probably, in the end, I don't think Elvis, that's like right at the very beginning of it. But like, the fact of the matter is, they would see something like Elvis and be like, perfect. And, it's funny when you look back, you look at those guys, you look at the people that were against that, right? You had Sullivan's show, they only shot him from the waist up, right? Those people were right. Their whole point was, if we allow this, the slippery slope begins, and now look at television. Like, in the end, here we are, 60 some odd years later, they were right. It's exactly what happened. Everybody looked at it, and it became, every generation, my generation did this. That didn't make it okay. And what we don't realize is that was cool in our generations because that's how the culture was formed. But now here we are, and we have the opportunity to make our own decisions. You're never going to save the people who are fully subverted. The only thing that can change their minds is a direct attack on them by them, which is one of the reasons why I'm enjoying this university piece so much. Because they created these animals. They taught them this bizarre version of history that is completely misguided and twisted. They taught it to them. And now they're getting it in their face. Let them eat their own. There's no way you're going to convince somebody like that of anything. Their ideology is too thick. If I hear something, like when Donald Trump talks about vaccines, every conservative cringes. Right? Every conservative cringes. But the program people, when they're fearless leaders start talking about whatever the hell they want to, they reposition themselves to support it no matter what. They reposition themselves to support it no matter what. It's why you hear, look how organized the Democrats are. Look, they're always in lockstep. They don't have this infighting that the Republicans have, as if that's like something to be admired. You know who didn't have that stuff? Stalin, Hitler, Mao. These are people whose parties were lockstep, agreed on everything. That's not what you want to emulate by any means, especially knowing the type of Republicans that are sitting in office right now, in particular in the House. I mean, there are, 11 of them who were legit? 11? Fortunately, the margin is small enough that, we got the House Speaker changed and one meeting with the deep state, and that's it. We've lost our House leader. He's now one of them. I didn't understand before I became House. When they sat me down and explained it to me, though, now I understand. I got to be on board with these guys. Everything I thought before was it's just because I didn't understand. But now that the deep state has explained it to me and how scary it would be if I tried to stand up for American values, well, we can't. I could say I stand up for American values, but how many people would die? This is the type of crap we're dealing with. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. Just straight nonsense. All right, folks. So we're past the hour now, and I want to. I got some family coming over. I want to make sure I am present and spending some time. So, what I will tell you, until next time, folks. I am considering. I think the audience has dropped off a little bit with the move to Thursday. So I can't go back to Wednesday. There's no way it can happen. So it's not a full-time gig for me, right? I'm just trying to get people aware. And this is totally my personal. I'm monetized on Facebook, but they'll never pay me. They don't even tell people 18,500 followers. And my initial viewing will get like 38 impressions. Like, how about you just let them know that it's there? And because what they'll do is they'll come to the page, and that's what you have to do is you generally have to come to the page. Rumble is a little bit better about alerts. YouTube, my own mother doesn't get alerts. But X is where I would like to grow, and I'm having a very hard time getting off the ground. I know it's always hard to get off the ground when you have no presence, and I only started this like 3 or 4 months ago. So and I'm not somebody who's posting 10 times a day. So, with that being said, it's not easy to get off the ground with X. But if you can, follow me on one of those platforms, it would definitely be appreciated. And remember, you can pick up the T-shirts, both what I'm wearing now and the new stuff that came out. This one's one of my favorites, Make Civics Great Again. Kind of lays out the
Why
What
should
are
the
Squad's
university
next
be
steps?
My apologies. Hold on. So it kind of lays out the purpose of what it's all about, and what I'm trying to accomplish is to kind of get people on back on pace and on their own, right? I can't teach you civics from ground up, but get you back interested again and give you some aha moments where you're like, really? That's how it was designed to work? Like, really? This is what we should be doing? Why are we doing this? Blah, 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 blah. Like, we've been, all of it. I can get into the whole thing right now. Again, I'll end up doing another hour. But I enjoy doing this, and that's why I'm here. But until next time, folks, for now, we're still Thursday nights. So one way that you can combat the shadow banning, I believe, is if you go to the follow. I think on all platforms they have this. If you go to the follow option, there is some options in there that are more detailed. That will, like YouTube has the bell, and I only come on once a week. Very rare that unless there's a cause update or something like that, and I have time. But otherwise, it's once a week. But you'll get alerted when I come on. Interact, jump in, bring your people who have questions about convention estates. But go in there and there's an option under every platform when you follow to get all alerts or get alerts when they go live, all of that stuff. So select that and you should be able, hopefully, if you do that and you don't get an alert, let me know that too, because I would not be shocked if they were still, if they weren't giving them out anyway. But until next time, folks, live free. I'm out.